who are called to be followers of Jesus Christ, we, as members of First Baptist Church, we need to sacrifice some things. If we want to see God move in us personally, if we want to see God move in our congregation, if we want to see God move in our city, there are some things that we need to say, God, they're yours. And I'm going to lay them on the altar, and I'm going to sacrifice them to you so that you can have them, you can consume them. Because, God, we just want to follow you. I promised you last week that over the coming weeks, we were going to talk about some of these things a little more closely. Some of the things that I believe as we look around, as we look deep inside ourselves, as we look around our congregation, things that need to be sacrificed. Today, we're going to talk about the first one of these. We're going to talk about agendas. You're like, oh, Lord, the preacher done gone to meddling. Don't worry, I'm not naming names. But before we get all tense and uptight about this, let me just tell you up front. Agendas can be very helpful, very useful. I mean, you think about it. Times where you've used an agenda. I think of times where I've walked into a meeting and I've had an agenda. Things where I've walked in to different situations and I've had an agenda. Agendas help us out because they let us know where our focus needs to be. Okay, we're coming in here to this meeting. This is what we're going to talk about. This is the point of it. Because if not, what happens? Well, you start chasing rabbits in a hurry, don't you? Agendas can be very helpful. They keep us focused. They also offer direction. If we have an agenda, we know where we're trying to get to. We know what the plan is. We know where we need to be. They help us out that way. And they also help, if we ever get off track, they get us back. It's the plan. It's the map for us to follow. So when I say this, hear me. Agendas in themselves are not bad things. We use them all the time. I believe that the Lord had an agenda when He set all of His plan in motion. And here's the problem. Agendas can become unhealthy. Agendas can become destructive in our lives. If we let them take over, despite their useful capabilities, they can turn destructive when they reach an unhealthy level. Now today what we're going to do is we're going to look at two women who both had agendas, but they were agendas that looked completely different. And we're going to see how one of them had a very healthy agenda and one of them had a completely destructive agenda. And what I'm hoping is that by the time we're through here this morning, that we can see, one, whether or not my agenda is destructive and unhealthy. Two, if it is, what do I do about it? And three, what's the better option? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at these two women, and I hope we can kind of decipher some of these things out of that. So if you would, stand with me as we read out of Luke chapter 10. We're going to start reading in verse 38. As Jesus and His disciples were on their way, He came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to Him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what He said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to Him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. You may be seated. Now we see in this passage, brief as it is, two completely different approaches. We see Mary, who her agenda is to be with Jesus, to sit at the feet of Jesus, to learn from Jesus. And we see Martha, who is just as busy can be. And that is her agenda. And we're going to see how Martha's agenda turned destructive quickly. Now, as I read this story, one of the things that stands out to me is this. Martha had completely missed the point. Martha had missed it. Now, before we start pointing fingers at her and telling her, how dare you? How could you be so naive? I mean, you have Jesus sitting in your living room and you're all worried about everything else. Before we point fingers at Martha, can we just all be open and honest enough to admit that we've all been there? We've all missed the point. We've all had agendas that have turned destructive because we couldn't see the forest for the trees. Martha's agenda had drifted into unhealthy territory. Now, I think it would be helpful before we move any further in this message if we define what an unhealthy agenda is. Yeah, I mean, after all, if we're going to try and decide whether or not we have unhealthy agendas, if we want to try and decide whether or not we're in that boat, we probably need to know what we're referring to. So here's what I'm calling an unhealthy agenda. Any desire or program that supplants Jesus and the growth of His kingdom in importance. That's an unhealthy agenda. If there's anything that is a desire of yours, a program that you're pushing, that takes the place of Jesus or the growth of His kingdom in importance, folks, you have an unhealthy agenda. Now some of you are going, oh, I don't know. I'm not real sure if I do or not. Well, we're going to look at this, and we're going to help you figure out if you do. But can I just tell you, right now at the very beginning, we all have agendas. We do. And the sooner we embrace that, the better off we're going to be. We all have agendas. The two women in the story both had agendas. They just turned out completely different. What I want to do now is I want to help us try to decipher and decide whether or not we have an unhealthy agenda. Have we harbored this agenda to the point that it has moved to an unhealthy level, or are we still okay? There's some things that we're going to look at because I believe there's three defining characteristics of an unhealthy agenda. The first one is this. You might have an unhealthy agenda if work takes the place of worship. If work takes the place of worship, you are most likely suffering from an unhealthy agenda. Look at verse 40. It says, Mary sitting at the Lord's feet said, but Martha was what? Distracted. Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Now again, before we get on poor Martha's case, she was really just doing what a good hostess was supposed to do. She had a guest coming to her house, and she is just busy trying to get everything in order. She wants the meal to be perfect. She wants the seating to be perfect. Oh, I need to make sure that the good china is out and clean and set just right so that my guests have the right impression. She's doing everything that a good hostess is supposed to do. Except that she gets things a little out of order. She forgets what the main point is. When Martha let work, she let the job at hand take the place of worship. I heard a professor tell me one time, and it stuck with me, because it makes a whole lot of sense. Doing the work of God never takes the place of spending time with God. And folks, in a church setting, that is extremely important to grasp. We can be busy about doing all kinds of good things, the things that we're supposed to do, like Martha was. We can be busy doing the right things for the wrong reasons and still miss the point. We have an unhealthy agenda. Work takes the place of worship. Here's some things that happen if work takes the place of worship. We become keenly aware of the job at hand. We have a laser focus of the thing that we want to get accomplished. It may be in a specific ministry that you're involved in. It may be just an area of the church that you're passionate about. But you have a laser focus and you are completely blind to everything else around you. Because you're so focused on just the job. When that becomes the case, we become driven to complete that task at all costs. Folks, this happens in all walks of life. But in the church, it breaks my heart because it is so destructive. When we become so driven to accomplish a specific task at all cost, here's the mindset that creeps in. I don't care who gets in the way. I don't care what collateral damage has to happen. I'm going to see this through. I'm going to make this happen. When work takes the place of worship, The end result is all that matters. It's not the people that we're trying to minister to. It's not the people that are standing in the way. The only thing that matters when work takes the place of worship is the end result. Folks, it's easy to see how this is a product of an unhealthy agenda. The other part of that is this. Not only are we driven to see the task completed at all cost, we become a self-appointed expert. That's what everybody's supposed to do. And I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I'm just wondering, in a room this size, how many has ever made a comment similar to this? So-and-so needs to be doing, you fill in the blank. Or somebody needs to do, you fill in the blank. Folks, comments like that tell me that we're suffering from an unhealthy agenda because we've let work take the place of worship. We've let the work be elevated to a position that's reserved for God alone. It's a dangerous place to be when that becomes our attitude. Because you see, left unchecked, that attitude turns destructive and toxic, especially in a church. You see, in a lot of our workplaces outside of church, this is the norm. Do whatever you got to do to get ahead. Be the first one, push hard. But in a church, it kind of goes contrary to everything that Jesus says. Jesus never says, how many people can you crawl over to get to the top? Jesus never says, how many people can you push to the side so that you can be first? In fact, Jesus says quite the opposite, doesn't he? This attitude, left unchecked, is destructive and toxic, especially in a church. The Scripture teaches us very plainly that there must be time for rest and worship and reflection if our agendas are to stay healthy. You don't believe me? This week you started in your Bible reading and you read the creation story. What did God do on the seventh day? He rested. He stopped. And just let that sink in for a second. Here's the God of the universe, who by His very word is speaking things into existence. He says, you know what? I just need to take a step back and rest. I just need to take a step back and pause. If God took a step back, if He stopped, if He rested, what's it say about us? We need to make time for this. Look at Jesus. How many times in Scripture do we see where Jesus took the time to just stop and pray? Jesus realized how important it was not just for rest, which I believe we see that as well, where He rested because there was so much taken out of Him. He took the time to rest. But when we see Him stop and take the time to pray and worship, what Jesus is saying is, I'm going to make sure that the main thing always remains the main thing. It's not the task, it's not the job, it's the God that I serve that is the main thing. Folks, we can look around and we can see all kinds of work that needs to be done. I'm just going to tell you, I hope it does get done. There are things that I believe that God has laid out in front of us, work that He has for us to do, but the work can never, never become the most important thing. The moment that we sacrifice worship for work, we have an unhealthy agenda. There's another distinguishing characteristic of an unhealthy agenda. And it's this. We may have an unhealthy agenda if we lash out at those around us when we don't get our way. Look with me at verse 40 again. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to Him, Jesus, and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. You ever lost your cool? You ever just been pushed to the point that, man, before you know it, those words are out of your mouth, you can't take them back, you've lost your cool. Martha did that. Martha was aggravated, to say the least. And again, before we give her a bad rap, put yourself in Martha's shoes. You've got an important guest coming to your house. It's going to be full of people who are there to see Jesus. You want everything to be perfect. You just want it just so. So you're going to put all the work in, all the extra time and effort in to make it the very best that it can be. And then you look up and the sister that you're expecting to be right behind you, busy as you are, what's she doing? She's sitting down. Oh, how dare her. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You're just busy getting it, trying to get a job done. You turn around, there's somebody kicked back, their feet propped up, drinking a Coke. And what's your first thought? Be honest, it's not God bless them. Or at least not the good one. You're thinking, how dare they sit down? How dare they sit over there and take it easy while I'm breaking my neck trying to make this happen? You're frustrated. It happens. Folks, we all get frustrated like that. And that's what happened to Martha. That's why she lost her cool. She got frustrated. And see, here's the thing. When our agendas become unhealthy, frustration naturally creeps in. Now, let me tell you something. Frustration is not the problem here. You're going to get frustrated whether you have a healthy agenda or an unhealthy agenda. The problem comes in how you deal with the frustration. Martha lashed out at those around her, Mary and Jesus. She was frustrated. She was wanting somebody to blame for what was going on. Why am I falling farther and farther behind? Why are things not going my way? Why am I not getting this? Why am I not getting that? Why is it not happening the way that I drew it up? I need somebody to blame. And she lashes out. Do you realize that it's not Mary, or just Mary, that she's doing that? Who's she directing this little discourse to? Jesus. Lord, don't you see what's going on? Mary's sitting here doing nothing. I'm doing all the work. What's she saying? You read between the lines there. You're not doing anything about it. I'm upset with you too. Tell her to get to work. Her frustration has boiled over to the point that she's lashing out because she didn't get her way. Now I wonder this morning if we ever do the same thing. Not just with other people. We could partially understand her getting upset with Mary, couldn't we? Oh, that's just sisters for you. That's how they get along. That's our love language. That's how we deal with one another. But she got upset with Jesus. I wonder if we ever do that same thing. Things didn't go my way. Thanks, God. I didn't get what I wanted. Well, Jesus, I thought you loved me. I wonder if we ever have that kind of attitude with Jesus. We get upset because we didn't get our way. Folks, can I just be honest with you? Whether it's somebody here, sitting in the pew next to you, or it's our Father in heaven, when we lash out of frustration, it's a sure telltale sign that we have an unhealthy agenda. Because what has happened? I've elevated myself to the position of importance. And when I don't get what I want, what I deserve, the way that I drew it up, the way that I planned, I get mad at everybody around me. That's what happened with Martha. I don't know how much notice Jesus had given her that he was coming to town, but I dare say that she was looking forward to it. She had told everybody, hey, Jesus is coming to my house. Oh, it's going to be a big party. You ought to come by and stop by and see Jesus at my house. Hey, by the way, did I tell you Jesus is coming to my house? She was excited when things started unfolding. And it wasn't the way that she had pictured them in her head. It wasn't the way that she had wanted things to go. She got frustrated and she lashed out. And what it did is it shined a light on just how destructive her agenda had become. It had become unhealthy. There's one more characteristic I want us to look at this morning. That is, we have an unhealthy agenda. Worry and turmoil tend to take root in our life. Worry and turmoil tend to take root in our life. Look at verse 41. Jesus responds to Martha's little temper tantrum. He says, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things. You are worried and upset about many things. See, Jesus knew this was more than just, hey, you put the wrong plate at the wrong setting. Hey, the tea hasn't been made yet. He said, Martha, you're worried and upset about a whole bunch of stuff. There's a lot of things going on inside you right now. It's because you've forgotten to make the main thing the main thing. Martha, you are all upset right now. You are all worried about how it's going to turn out because you've forgotten to make the main thing the main thing. See, God never intended His people to be a worrying people. Philippians 4:6 tells us what? Don't be anxious about anything. Now, that's kind of a big statement. Don't be anxious about anything. But you know how the Apostle Paul can make that kind of statement? Because he knows what the main thing is. And the main thing is worship of our God, a relationship with Him. And if that's the main thing, the other things will work themselves out through Him. I don't have to worry about it. It's in God's hands. Martha had forgotten that. And as a result, worry and turmoil plagued her life as she worries about all these things. She was just beside herself. She's asking questions like, how am I going to get all this done? I just feel like I'm overwhelmed and swamped. It's never going to get done. Jesus is going to be here. Everybody else is going to show up. And nothing is going to be the way that I planned it out to be. She goes on from there and starts thinking, well, what will people think? If I don't get this right, what are people going to say? I'm going to be the talk of the town and not in a good way. Oh, Martha was the one that served Jesus with Dixie cups and paper plates. What are people going to say? And then she starts letting doubt creep in. Did I measure up? So-and-so had the mayor over the other day, and man, she put on a feast for him. This is Jesus, and I can't even manage to pull this together. What are people going to say? Do I measure up here? Can I meet the standard that I've set for myself? You can see how she would have herself tied in knots. But it all boils down to one thing. Martha had failed to make the main thing the main thing. See, the problem is that Martha had forgotten what was most important. Her guest. In her efforts to make the party perfect. In her efforts to make everything just so. She had forgotten about the most important thing. Her guest. So here is her guest sitting in her living room. What's Martha doing? Not spending time with her guest. See, she could have made everything absolutely perfect. She could have had it just so. If she neglected her guest, it was all for naught. She's wasted her time. Martha worried over things that should not have been her main concern. Any of y'all like that? We spend all of our time worrying and stressing over things that in light of eternity don't mean much at all. They're fleeting. They're passing. They don't mean that much. But we will get ourselves all worked up, tied in knots, because that's what we make the most important. What people think of us. How am I going to measure up? What are people going to say? What's it going to look like to the outside world? We let worry and turmoil slip in. Folks, if we've ceased to make the main thing, if we've ceased to make time with Jesus our priority, we have an unhealthy agenda. If any of these characteristics that we've talked about apply to you, it's safe to say that we suffer from unhealthy agendas. So what do we do about it? We can all walk out of here today, right now, and say, well, I've got an unhealthy agenda, but I guess it's just always been that way. It'll always be that way. Or we can decide that we're going to do something about it. We look at the other agenda in this story. Mary, the other sister, the impression we get is that she, with her sister Martha, is hosting this party. They together are welcoming Jesus in. Now, do you think she's any less concerned about all this other stuff? She knows there's people coming. She knows that there's food that needs to be made, tea that needs to be poured. She knows all the stuff that's going on. But Mary made a better choice. Look at verse 42. It says that only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Martha had an agenda just like Mary did. But Martha let hers take on a life of its own until it became destructively unhealthy. Mary chose what was best. She spent time with Jesus. Like Mary, we have to make that same choice. To seek Jesus and abide in His presence. If we want to deal with our unhealthy agendas, we have to be willing to, just like Mary, sacrifice all of our own agendas to be near Jesus. I just want you to stop for a second, think about what that would look like. I told you earlier that we all have agendas. What are yours? What are the things that you hold dear, that you're pushing for, that you want to see happen? Are you willing, like Mary, to come lay those at the feet of Jesus and say, as important as I believe these things to be, you're what's most important? Jesus, as important as all these things are to me, as important as I tell everybody they are, as much time as I've devoted to them, Jesus, you are still the most important thing to me. This morning, are you willing to sacrifice your agenda to follow Jesus? That's what He asks of us, by the way. When He tells us to take up our cross and follow Him, when He tells us to count the cost, that's what He's saying. Nothing comes before me. Not your agendas, nothing. They sacrificed before me. And that's what it takes to follow. Folks, I truly believe that if we as a people will embrace this, God's got something miraculous to do in and amongst us. Until we make Him the main thing, it cannot and will not happen. This morning, are you willing to sacrifice your own agenda for the good of the kingdom? Let's pray. Father, we come to you right now. But to the best of our ability, we acknowledge that we do have agendas. We all have things that we hold dear, things that we are pushing forward, things that we would like to see happen. God, we also know that there are instances in our life where those agendas have become unhealthy. They've become unhealthy because they have become what is important in our life. They've taken the place that belongs to you and you alone. Father, my prayer this morning that you would speak to each and every one of us. God, not only that you would show us our unhealthy agendas, but God, you would give us the courage, just like Abraham, to lay them on the altar. And you would give us the courage to sacrifice them. Or as we once again make the main thing the main thing. God, I ask now as we move into this time of response, God, you would move amongst us. God, you would have your will and way in each and every heart here. And may this time of response bring you honor and glory. We love you and come to you in Jesus' name. Amen.